late May, early June, and all labor is being donated by D&D North and Country Construction, which I think is another example of how the community has come to support this particular facility and the Morrison football field. It's our hope that, and I did give the clerk, I believe, some information, that it's our hope that the board will will approve this and allow the Friends of Newfoundland Football to build the press box, and again at no cost to the district tax.
Anything to add?
Good question. Have you prepared a motion for us?
I have something, I'm not quite sure how you would like it, but I do have, since I'm not on the floor, something if I might give to you.
Oh, look, it's even on our form. Nice, I like
You go.
that. Thank you. What do you want to take this?
It should be a separate item, don't you think?
And part of the items that have been presented with this agenda is the estimate through 13 phases of construction for this, along with the building plans. We've also, due to the timing of it, we received a letter, which I can read out. Couldn't get it into the agenda, but authorizing the, should say, Chief Yanuzzi of the Bristol Fire Department reviewed the construction plans of the building, and essentially included in those plans, it just needs smoke detectors on each level and a fire extinguisher in the concession area. And at this time, you'll notice in the design that you saw, the wiring will be used off of a generator, so they also certified that, and I can pass that to the board chair as well.
Okay. I'm going to read the motion.
I've also prepared and had a small construction contract approved by our liability insurer, PLT, now through the Health Trust.
Okay.
So they reviewed that for language and looked at it and approved it.
Okay. So the motion, which has just been modified, so I'll read it and then ask you if you want to make this motion. Is going to say, I make a motion to approve the construction of a press box / storage area / concession stand on Morrison Field, meeting all requirements as set forth by the Bristol Fire Chief, including the amendments required by the Fire Chief.
In correspondence dated May 7th.
May 7, 2014.
Thanks, Mike.
No problem. Mr. Coffin did the work on that one too. Give them the credit, they really worked hard to get this done in a relatively short period of time.
Okay, because this is a written motion, I think it needs to be a separate motion when we consider motions,
Okay.
as opposed to consent. So this one won't be on the consent agenda, and so I'll ask someone to make that motion at that time. Any questions or discussion? Yeah?
On what was presented to us, there's no line item on the wiring.
That's correct.
So there is an electrician going to be hired in addition to
We did discuss this at the oversight meeting. The design will have to be built without wiring as designed. If they do, that would have to essentially be a secondary project, in my opinion.
because it's not going to be that functional without wiring.
Well, we don't have electricity at the field.
You know, but they could be plugged into a generator.
You will notice that the fire chief has, so essentially they could run an extension cord into there, that'd be fine.
Yeah.
And that's what they've been doing in the past.
I think Brian
You guys
is
are right here.
Brian wants to fix that.
Yes.
Brian Richardson, Alexandria. I have discussed with some members of Daniel's Electric the possibility of them doing that. There are a couple of parents that actually work for Daniel's that have kids that play football in junior high and high school. I believe that probably will be something that will be willing to do. Can't give you an absolute definite But the preliminary construction is without wiring at this point in time. But that will come, and we will present that to the oversight, the football field oversight committee, and we will get permission from you before we can go forward with that. But primarily what we're trying to do at this point is we're trying to get the building started, yeah, and we're trying to be able to get our storage stuff that's in the trailer that we're renting currently right now into this, so that we won't have to pay for that anymore.
One other question on the design. I'm used to footers that are normally 3 feet, at least 3 feet into the ground, and I tried to read what's on the thing, and it looks only like 1'6". So is that, have they kind of certified that the frost won't be affecting this building?
Well, I mean, we all know that when we build homes and, in this area of the country, we like to have our foundation below across, 4-foot walls. That wasn't put into this plan. This is not a building that's going to be used or anything. It's going to be used a couple of months of the year. I personally have built a house on a slab before, and I've had no issues with it. It's still standing, 30 years later. I don't, I'm not a contractor.
Right.
I mean, I don't really think there's anything to be concerned about getting a plan as it is, in my opinion. I have a better copy of this. You can pass that along so you can see it a little bit better. It's a little bit larger.
But that is right, it's
Yeah.
1'6".
Yeah.
So,
In phase 1, too, they're setting the form at a 6-inch cement slab. And that's
so I
our thing.
assume they could strengthen the slab so
It will
the
be
frost
rebar.
wouldn't hit the ground.
Yep.
Anyone else? Okay.
Madam
Steve?
Chair, I have
Yes?
another motion.
Okay.
Also discussed at the recent meeting was that the class of 2013's class gift was for bleachers for Morrison Field. So at our meeting, we felt we should at least bring this forward, although they will not be permanent bleachers, we want to at least bring it to the board to see if they would accept the donation from the class of 2013, which would be roughly $5,000 also.
Okay, thank you. That's a lot. I'm going to read that motion. I make the motion to accept portable bleachers for Morrison Field. These bleachers will be purchased with the donation from the Newfound Regional High School, class of 2013, class gift. Any questions or discussion about that?
Has the money been put aside?
Yes. It was in the 2013 class treasury, and if it gets approved, it'll be turned over, I guess because of the new learning of proper procedure and whatnot, their class account has to close out at the end of this year, I believe. So to move money will be moved into my athletic account, and my athletic director's account, not the school budget.
So the mechanics of that are that if we accept it, that money gets written to the athletic budget.
So the athletic department, athletic director, not the school district budget, the athletic director.
With the specific purpose
Correct.
attached to it.
Correct. And that's a simple transfer.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. That too, because it's already written, will be a separate motion. Stacy, we postponed update from the superintendent on the board staff appreciation event.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
you'd stepped out.
Sorry, that was piece later on. She's taking a break. I've been working with Mike and Phil, our food service director. I also got some information. The question came up about who gets kind of recognized for years of service, and it is all staff, including support staff. I think the concern is that we don't pay support staff to come in that day. So working with Phil, we came up with a breakfast option, which I like, with the notion we would do breakfast from 8 to 9, and then do the awards at 9, which might encourage support staff to come, because it's not kind of smack dab in the middle of the day. It's not, taking up your whole day, but it's, in the morning. Phil is recommending a breakfast of a fresh yogurt bar with fresh fruit cup and granola, pancakes and maple syrup, scrambled eggs, 2 ways, sausage, home fries, coffee and juice.
I think Vincent Health can make it.
And so if the board is okay with that, we'll move forward with that plan, and we'll, I know Sue's been working on the staffing list to make sure it's accurate as to who gets recognized and getting those gifts, and we'll get invitations out to everybody, the next couple of weeks. There's plenty of time.
The date again?
The 18th. As of this moment, with as long as we don't have any
No
additional
snow days.
days, I put that clause in there at all times. It is the 18th.
Thank you. Before we go on to other new business, I just realized we have not asked Mimi for any report. Do you have anything you'd like to share on that? Sorry about that, Mimi.
No, thank you.
I'll make sure I put that on next time. Okay, next we have a field trip, excuse me, a field trip request.
I have a request from New Hampton Community School, 3rd grade, to go to Boston to the New England Aquarium on June 12th, leaving at 7:45, coming back around 4. 21 students, approximately 10 plus chaperones. You have the information in your packet. It's a pretty typical field trip.
Any questions? Discussion? So that too will go to the consent agenda?
Is that the only thing on the consent agenda?
No, there've been a few, so I was just going to ask you what you've been putting on. Okay, so on the consent agenda will be,
Because the minutes you said you were going to take separately, so that wouldn't be consent agenda.
well, we were only taking the February minutes separately, so the second set of minutes from April would be on the consent agenda. And now the,
The second reading, policy, second reading.
do we have to approve them? Or do they just get approved if we don't?
If they're on the consent agenda and that agenda passes.
Okay, so second read for policies. And now the field trip request. Yeah, take it. Thank you.
The way that's supposed to work, if I may,
Yeah.
is we can, at the request of the chair, if an item gets put on the consent agenda and there's no objection, then it gets put on. But you have another opportunity at the time of the vote for the consent agenda, if there's an objection because you thought of something and you want to change your mind about it. Then without discussion, if you object, the items get taken separately. Whatever item we don't want in there. It's kind of like an individual board member veto power, so you have the opportunity to...
Or if you want to abstain.
Yeah, you have the option to abstain too. But the idea of consent is that there is no objection. And as long as that continues, then it's an easy vote with 5 or 6 items on it.
Okay, next we have a long list of handbooks to approve. And I am looking for a motion before we discuss these.
I'd like to make a motion to table the support staff handbook and the specialist handbook.
Second.
Okay. Right, I just have to write it down. Okay, so that was Jeff and Sue, and a motion.
Jeff and
Jeff and Vincent Paul, I'm sorry, see, that's why I'm writing it down. Okay, and a motion to table is not debatable, is that the right word?
Right.
Okay,
It's just taken, the vote's just taken. no discussion.
Okay. All right, so all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? So moving on, we have NRHS Faculty Staff Handbook, BES Faculty Staff Handbook, NMMS Faculty Staff Handbook, BHVS Faculty Staff Handbook, DES Faculty Staff Handbook, NHCS Faculty Staff Handbook, and the Newfound Area Elementary Schools Student Parent Handbook.
So these have all gone through policy, we've made adjustments and recommendations, and those have what you got. The email, I do have hard copies, if I brought a couple with me if anybody would like them.
Move to approve those handbooks that you have.
Won't they just go to the consent agenda and we
Oh, yes.
move them all at once? But
Yeah. No, I have no problem with that.
is there any discussion or questions? Yes?
Just have a comment. In prior years, some of the handbook stuff was presented in advance to the school board, and then we got a chance to look it over. And I, for one, read this stuff. And during one year when I read it, I was halfway through it and found dozens and dozens of errors, typos, content, and otherwise. But what really riled me was I found out that it had already gone to the printers. And I know the policy committee has reviewed these, and I trust the work that the policy does, but I haven't had a chance to review these in advance. And for that reason, I will abstain from voting on these, but in the future, for anything to come before the board to have a vote on it, if I'm going to be asked to vote on it rather than rubber stamp it, I'm going to read it. So I didn't have a chance to do that. And so, just as a comment, to be sure that timing-wise, that information is provided in advance as part of a packet or...
So if I could just add to that, so we needed to wait till committees were developed before we can meet for policy. That was developed, we met Tuesday of last week.
Yep.
They were emailed to everybody on Wednesday as fast as we could possibly get them out, so.
That was an email to me?
With the board packet, every single one of those was sent out.
Those were part of the attachments, yeah. I think I understand the bigger concern was that in the past, these have gone to print before we got them to approve.
Right, and I heard that, so this
yeah.
is why we brought them all to the board, and you'll have some more next month.
Yep. Okay, any other discussion, comment? Okay. So now we are on to approval of job descriptions, another enormous list, this time 25 of them. Can I ask you, Stacy, to just explain why we have so many job descriptions?
So one of my goals for the year was to review our job descriptions and make sure we had an accurate job description to go with every role we have in the district. And so these kind of align with the kind of the handbooks and everything else that we've been working on. And so as we were going through those, we were realigning and looking at all of those job descriptions. So this is one list. You will likely get another big list at your next meeting as we continue, as I continue to work my way through the job description handbook, as we have all the job descriptions as I go through them while we're reviewing them, so.
Can I make one correction?
Sure.
Roman numeral 13 and 19, both one should have the initial BES in front of it, and one should have the initials NRHS, because although the jobs are similar, they're very different in the two schools, so they have separate job descriptions.
The first was BES, and the second was NHCS?
And our high school.
NRHS, okay. And so, just because we're in the normal portfolio, I know that that's Student Support Center Coordinator. Yes. And the second one is Student Support Center Coordinator.
Correct, so we wanted to
All
add
right.
school initials.
But, types of
So
jobs.
it's only for Danbury
Bristol and
Oh,
the high
these
school
ones.
have, yes.
and the other elementary schools.
They don't
They don't
have
have those positions.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. So if there's no objection, that goes to the consent agenda.
Those descriptions were in the email as well.
Yes.
In very small print. So, but yeah, it was a big email.
I recall the justification for that was to just not weigh down the packet.
It was going to be
They're
huge.
hundreds of pages, and also because they're in very small print, as a PDF, you can actually read them to your comfort level on, as in, you can zoom in and convert them to whatever you want.
Yeah, I did put on the email that if anybody wanted hard copies, I could print them out and get them to you.
Yeah, and they were standardized in a lot of ways, so that you're looking for something in one, you can find it in the other, so that was good.
I don't think they've been reviewed in quite some time, so if we review these periodically, you shouldn't get anything like this, right?
Right.
So if we continue to upgrade and improve as we find out, there's bits and pieces of these that would work better. We should always be looking at it as a living document, not like every 10, 15 years.
It was like
go at it.
2002, 2004, since a lot of them haven't been looked at.
Yes, we had a lengthy discussion, we made a number of corrections and typographical corrections and things like that too, comparisons.
Right. Okay, next we have a request for 3 additional paraprofessionals for the next school year. So Stacy, I'll turn that over to you.
Yep, and Ann can certainly jump in, but you have the request in your packet. And in general, we are asking for 3 new para-professionals, 2 for here at the high school. Currently are 18 to 21-year-olds. So in special education, we're required to educate students till they're 21 or gain a high school diploma. So these are really more low-functioning students. Currently, when they have finished 4 years of high school here at Newfound, we contract out with a provider to provide those after 21 service, after 18-year-old services. And there's really not a reason to do that. We can sustain those students here. They've been here, they've been successful. And so we are looking to bring that program here as opposed to contracting it out. Our current staff can do it, but we need to continue with 2 paraeducators for the 2 students who would be here for that program. So that the money for that program, for those paras would come from that out-of-district kind of line for that. We would be, instead of contracting out for far more money with an outside provider, we're going to do it in-house. But we need 2 paraeducators to be able to do that. The other is a middle school student who is currently out of district. Again, we're bringing that student back in district, but we'll need a paraeducator to work with that student. And so, again, the money for that would come from that line. At the end of the day, it's an overall cost savings for all of them, but it will bring the students back into district.
What is the difference between what we spend for the outplacement and what we will spend?
I didn't bring my budget with me, but it's significant.
I think, I'm gonna just throw out, didn't you say it's 150,000 for them now?
It depends on what the placement is, and I don't want to speak because it's just one student. So I'm comfortable giving numbers in public.
Oh, I was
because
talking
it's just
about,
one.
I was talking about
The high school.
all of them, not,
all together.
not just one.
Right.
It would, the cost for all 3 would be well over 100,000. It's been budgeted in the tuition line.
And how much for the paras?
It depends on their category and their years of experience and whatever you approve for a pay scale.
And what they take for benefits. Like it's,
But significant.
Significant will be less.
And the plan would be for the paraprofessionals who may have not been hired back next year, that we would now have positions for 3 of those people.
and this was, Ann did a really nice job in analyzing it, because at first we were looking, our 18 to 21-year-olds, that perhaps it was actually cheaper to keep them out of, to do the model we were doing, but after analyzing it, Ann did look to say, and it will be cheaper for us. So-
And I feel confident saying a better educational experience.
That was my next question, right. So will they be mainstreamed, or will they just have a program within the building?
Within the building and the community, the staff has already been working to try to develop connections and relationships with local businesses and other private schools to talk about what other vocational opportunities might be available to the students.
Anyone else? Okay, so without objection, we'll put that on the consent agenda. Okay, the next item is approval of specialist contracts for 2014, 2015. I'm looking for a motion there.
I'd like to make a motion that we table the specialist contracts in conjunction with the tabling of the handbooks.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, motion to table is not debatable. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, next we have nominations of new professional staff for 2014-2015.
So I'm going to send around a summary sheet for you. Until it gets around. To start, I have 2 resignations. I'm bringing forward the resignation of Bridget Gray here at the high school, who's a social studies teacher effective June 30th, 2014. I'm also bringing forward the resignation of Valerie Kehoe from Bridgewater Hebron as the reading specialist, effective the same date, June 30th. I'm bringing forward the nominations of Nicole Presley for the high school as a special education teacher.
Can I just stop and ask you a
Yeah.
question? Do we always read the names out? We do, okay,
It's
sorry.
Nolan.
Okay, go ahead.
Sally DeLong, who is currently a contracted para, who will be at New Hampton Community School as a special education teacher. Catherine Pearson for the middle school will fill the nurse position. Our nurse is retiring there. Angela Hurd will be at Bristol Elementary School as a Title I teacher. That's a grant-funded position. Ann Fogg, who will be at Bridgewater Hebron Village School, who will fill a special ed position. That's another retirement. Dorothy Beadle at Bridgewater Hebron will fill the reading specialist position. And Dorothy Uncles will be elementary school, the school psychologist. That will be a 4-day-a-week position. And that is replacing a contracted provider who we currently have. So the board's goal was to, and it's grant funded, the board's goal was to try to eliminate contracted providers and hire employees, so that's what we have worked on doing.
Any questions?
I have a question. If it's grant funded, why are they on a step?
Because they're in the teacher's contract, so they still are step and track. It's just the funding comes from a grant.
And they're still our employee,
Yep.
even though the source of their salary comes from non-tax. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, so if there's no objection, we'll put that on the consent agenda.
Mike just said, just so you know, on any grant-funded positions on their contract, we have revised the contract language to indicate that they're grant-funded and that if there was no funding, there was no position, just so people are aware of that. That hasn't always been clear on our contracts.
And
So,
I just want to check, so, and you've discussed that with the union?
Yep.
Okay. Because even grant funded, they're allowed to be a member of the.
Yep. Yes, it doesn't matter where the funding comes from.
Okay,
It's the role that matters for them.
okay. Okay, at this time, it's our second public comment, and this is comment on agenda items only.
Hi, you do answer the questions?
I'm sorry, what?
Do you answer any questions this
No.
time?
Yes?
Harold Riley. Madam Chair, I offer my apologies before when I said about saluting the flag. I wasn't here when you convened the meeting early.
That's fine.
I apologize.
That's fine, thank you. Yes? Yeah.
It's on the agenda only in the gross sense that, would it be possible to have microphones?
Someone else already brought that up, so we're gonna try to do it next time.
Excuse me.
Yep. Yes.
Me?
Yes.
Thanks. I'd just like to comment on the, the agenda items themselves, and, I was able to go online and see that the board packets there, all the information that you get, although I don't know if it's all there, but in the past, we've had to fight to get public transparency and get, these kind of things available to us before meetings, and, to be able to see that as well as, the past meetings there, it's great to see all that public transparency for us. And it looks great and it's easy to find.
Anyone else? Yes?
Fred Robinson from Danbury. I was just wondering if, since we have so many new job descriptions, whether those job descriptions will be issued at the time that the support staff and specialists receive their contracts, so that they will know what changes may be in the job that they will be doing next year, to help them to decide whether they do want to sign a contract or not. So it's...
We can't answer that.
Oh, I know. That was just a suggestion.
Thank
It was
you,
just
Fred.
Duly noted.
Yeah.
Thank you.
More on that later, honestly, but. Anyone else? Okay, so at this time, it's time for the consent agenda. So, and the passing of the consent agenda. So do I have a motion to pass the items on the consent agenda?
Could we just review that items that are up there?
Sure. So in the pink, because it was the darkest color, or yellow, we have the April 14, 2014 minutes, the second read for the policies, the field trip request, the handbooks, the job descriptions, the approval of the 3 para-educators, and the resignations and nominations.
Okay, is there any objection to the consent agenda? Okay, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to pass the consent agenda.
I have a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
Do we need to specify the handbook since we tabled a few, or do we need to?
Yeah, I can put it on, in the minutes, we can list them all, with the exception of support
those
specialists. This will be the,
Yeah, because we listed them when we put them on there.
So it is for handbooks 3 to 9. And for job descriptions, it's 1 through 25. She's writing out the letters.
Yeah, I think I got them all.
Just do the numbers.
Yeah.
It's just number 3 to number 10. I mean to number 9, I'm sorry.
And then the job descriptions.
And then the job descriptions are 1 through 25, as amended, because we added the BES and the NRHS.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, that's items I through X, X, and E.
Right.
1 to 25. Symbolizing. 1 to 25.
Okay, translation.
Okay, so,
Just trying to keep it like.
yeah. So now, do we have a motion to pass the items on the consent agenda? And is there a second?
Second.
Okay, there was a fight for that. Okay, second from Ben, first by Vincent Paul. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Okay. All right, so now we move on to individual agenda items. And I believe we have 3. We have 2 from the football field oversight committee, and 1 for the first minutes from the deliberative session. So I'd take each of those separately. So do I first have a motion to accept the minutes from the deliberative session on February 1st? So moves.
Second.
And second by Don.
As amended.
As amended, yes, okay. So Sue moves, John seconds to accept the minutes from the February 1st deliberative session as amended. All those, is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And abstentions. Ben abstains. You have to actually say that, yes.
I would like to abstain.
Oh, and, I'm sorry, and Christine abstains also, Sue. So that's 5-2. Okay, so we have 2 football field oversight committee motions. I'm going to, I guess, read and then ask for a motion, so our sponsor of this. First one is I make a motion to approve the construction of a press box / storage area / concession stand on Morrison Field, meeting all requirements as set forth by the Bristol Fire Chief, including the amendments required by Fire Chief in correspondence dated May 7, 2014. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I'll second that.
And a second by Christine. Where do you put second? Just like this? On this form, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I've modified that form since, for that reason.
I honestly, I think just like the other type motion you got, I wouldn't worry about the form, it's more the words of the motion.
Yeah. I just wanted to record who did it
Yeah,
before I pass it over
perfect.
to Sue. Okay, all those in favor?
Discussion.
Oh, discussion, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Could you pass that motion over to Sue? So the motion carries. And the second one is I make a motion to accept portable bleachers for Morrison Field. These bleachers will be purchased with the donation from the Newfound Regional High School class of 2013 class gift. Is there a motion to move this?
So moved.
And is there a second?
Second.
Competition. Okay, all right, second. I heard Don first. What's that?
Do they have heated seats?
Bring your own cushion.
Okay, is there any discussion? I just want to ask a question before we pass this. Do the rest of the classes now know that they can't leave money in an account because we can't hold it? So that maybe they'll spend it before they graduate instead of leaving it behind and then having to spend it?
We're probably working on it.
We're working on it to some degree, because honestly, your class, this is not your money to be able to tell them what to do with it or not. That's one of the definitions of a student activity fund. You can't even approve if they want to buy, a giant marshmallow, you're for the middle of the school, you would basically have to vote, we don't want a giant marshmallow in the middle of our school. So it's their money,
So
and we
in
can't
general,
touch it.
I understand they chose this, I just want to
Right.
make sure the other.
They can actually take the money and leave with it if they want to. They would
Correct.
just go to their treasurer for whatever, if they wanted to have a reunion or something like that at
Exactly.
any point in time.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we're,
Yeah.
so I think, I don't know how well they're getting to other classes, but I think we're at least starting from the current class to say, at the end of the year, you need to do something with these funds.
Okay,
The purpose of which is we don't want to be the fiscal agent to that money
Right.
when that class steps away, so they need to dispose of it accordingly, and that's really what it
right.
comes down to.
Okay. I just don't want them forced to,
Yeah.
No.
yeah.
They can put it in their own bank account.
Yeah. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, could you pass that over as well? Thank you. Okay, next we have approval of manifests.
Yes. I believe we have to approve the manifests of February, March, and April. Because I don't think we have done February yet.
Is that
Move to
true?
approve.
Oh,
And
okay.
Leah's not here,
Yeah,
so I
there were-
can't
I'm caught up till today, so I don't.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so, so
Move to approve.
I guess you want to make that motion?
Yes, I move to approve the manifest for the months of February, March, and April 2014.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Jeff. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstain.
None abstains. Did you hear that, Sue?
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Does this include April?
Yeah. February,
Yes,
March,
February,
and
March,
April.
April, yeah.
I want to oppose that.
Okay. So you want to change that to 5I.
Can I change mine? Saying I didn't realize it was so far back.
Okay. Let me just take
Let's
the
take
vote
another
again
vote.
and call
One
each
more
person.
time.
Okay? So we have a motion to approve by Sue, a second by Jeff. Is it all right? Can I legally retake this vote?
Yeah, for clarity.
Okay, all right. I think I
There
need
being
to.
no objection by any member.
Great. Okay, so I'm going to call on you individually, go around the table. Okay, so
What
Jeff.
about doing each month separately?
It's not how it was presented.
You would have to withdraw the motion. Or ask if they'll take a friendly amendment. Okay? So do you want to ask them that? or-
Yeah,
I don't mind changing the motion.
motion to
I don't mind.
individual months.
Okay, so through friendly amendment, we'll vote on each month, one at a time. All right, so all those in favor of passing, approving, the manifest for February, and I'm going to call on you though. Jeff?
Yes.
Christine? Abstain. Ben?
Abstain.
Ben abstains. Don?
Yes.
Vincent Paul?
Yes.
Rudy? Yes. Sue?
Yes.
Okay, so February passed with 2 abstentions from our new members, and a yes from everyone else. The next month is March, and so again, Jeff,
Yes.
Christine,
Abstain.
Ben,
Abstain.
John,
Yes.
Vincent Paul,
Yes.
me, yes,
Yes.
Sue, yes. Okay, so on to April. Jeff,
Yes.
Christine,
Yes.
Ben,
Yes.
Don,
Yes.
Vincent Paul,
No.
Ruby, yes. Sue.
Yes.
Okay, announcements and recognitions? Yes, please. Do you have something for
I
us?
have a couple things. I just wanted to pass around, this was the commendation that we were given at the executive counselors meeting that I went with Sheila Miller. We are one of three high schools in the state who actually require a financial literacy course independent of other courses for graduation, and so that was recognized at the state level, so I will pass that around. It's a nice little award. I also attended the Bristol Elementary School Science Fair, which was wonderful. It was really exciting to see 4th and 5th graders really work hard on those science projects. I was very impressed. And I will pass around, I can read all the awards, but there were a ton of them. But they were just, it was outstanding. I think the kids did a really nice job. I will add that DI has met their fundraising goal and are off to Tennessee. So they were excited. They worked really, really hard to get there and did a lot of work, but they are excited to go.
Can I just interject quick? They're having another supper at the 104 Diner tomorrow night, I think, and the students are serving and proceeds go. So they're still trying to get some cash.
I sent out last week an email about visiting, in my superintendent's notes, about visiting the vocational program. I did connect with them because it's so late. I know I had 2 board members interested in dinner, and so I'm gonna put this kind of for a September conversation to see if people are interested. I don't think they'll do dinner just for 2 people because we have to hold all the students, we have to have all the students there, but it would be a great opportunity for the board to go and get a tour of the building, the program. They're actually up for, it's their year this year to get a bond to renovate the programs and add some new programs to it, keeping up with the times, and so next year might be a good opportunity to go and see the program. So I will put that on our agenda for September to maybe pick a date, and I can work with them to see if we can get there for dinner. I think they're more than excited to be able to do that for us.
I've got a couple questions on that. I know Vincent Paul, you said you wanted to go, and who else wanted to?
And I had Dawn say.
Okay, okay. And then the second question is, it's a regional vocational center, right?
Correct.
So does Plymouth pay for that, the renovations?
Yes.
They do, we don't.
We don't, no, it doesn't come, it's actually a bond that everybody from Plymouth, all the surrounding towns, vote on it. So it didn't pass this year, it didn't pass, I believe, from my conversations with the superintendent, it passed in all towns with the exception of Ashland, which was totally slanted the other way, which caused it to fail. And it was a couple $1 million for renovation. So I believe they're gonna go back next year and try it again. I just, some of the programs are just wonderful. We have a lot of kids who graduate, they have an LNA program, food service, and it's just it's a wonderful opportunity for our kids.
I know last year I noticed that they started school, you know how early it was, they started on the first day that they could qualify for a federal grant for vocational program. Yes, and so if you started on that day, August 22nd, I think that gave you the opportunity to get that money.
And I would just encourage the board to look at the district calendar. We have lots of concerts coming up, lots of end of the year activities, so that's the best place to go to find what's going on and where all those dates are.
Okay. Next is review of agenda and board meeting procedures. Before we start on that, I just want to say, I thought about sending you out an email and saying, what do you think of this new one? But we can't have that discussion in private. And even if I'm just soliciting information, there's the danger that somebody will take it and then they'll email between one another and then we'll have a quorum talking. So what I did do though was I sent you all the policy on public participation, so I'd like to attack this part of it first. One major thing is, we always list this as ADHD, and that's not the name of the policy. It's BDDH. So, and I think we've done that over and over again, it just gets transferred from agenda to agenda. And my concern about that policy, like I said earlier, is that we don't practice what it is, and I'm okay with that, but I think our policy has to either reflect what we do or we have to do what our policy says, because if you don't, then people, organizations like to invoke policy later, like when it's convenient. I don't want us to be that organization that does it. So, so I don't want us to just whip out a policy someday on somebody and say it's right here, and then have the inconsistency of us not having followed our own. So the first concern is number 3 says members of the public may offer comments on agenda items only. Then on the next page, under number 8, it says time will be set aside for citizens to address the board, and that, there's a little bit of contradiction there. And then number 4 says, any individual wishing to speak shall give his or her name, address, and the group, if any, that is represented. Then on the next page it says, thus questions may be directed to individual board members, but answer must be deferred pending consideration by the full board. So I saw those as areas we need to revisit. And so I'd like to suggest that we send this policy back to the policy committee and that we come up with something temporary until this is fixed to address whatever we want to come up with. Yes, go ahead.
Madam Chair, you've identified, I think, an issue that's a tough one for all school boards in the state to deal with, and that is keeping up on all of the policy changes that inevitably get affected through a ripple impact, if you will, if you make a decision or a choice by the board and you don't consider all of the ramifications. So I don't think you're wrong in pointing this out, but it's a challenge for us as a board to really do anything that's effective to the benefit of the school district, maybe without breaking a few rules. with respect to our policy, maybe without not following our policy. And I would like to cite a few examples of that, and then I have a solution that perhaps we could consider under other business. But along the lines of your request to direct this particular policy back to the policy committee to be fixed, I'd like to cite through some historical examples what I'm talking about specifically. And if I could, if you'd indulge me for a moment, I have a bunch of notes on this topic. On April 9th of 2012, I'm reading from approved minutes for the meeting of that date. And right after notice of posting, starting on line 28, it said, Vincent Paul Migliore noted, the first item is the modification of the change in the format of the proposed agenda with a brief introduction, and asked the board if it can be accepted. Vincent Paul Migliore's first change would be to move the recognition to the beginning of the agenda. The next item would be to change section 5, called intercommunications, which has the sign-in sheet, the form one would sign in to get a packet from the school board, as Todd Westfall had mentioned earlier this evening. Then immediately going into public comment, which is not limited to items on the agenda, keeping this within the 5-minute time limit for public comments. He said he would like to recognize the presence of any elected officials present first. He then mentioned the section of this reserved bullet is intended if we decided to do anything along the lines with a faculty liaison to be a placeholder for that purpose, which is then what we did later on. Having passed a policy, by the way, to create that position. And then a student council liaison would speak next. And then Mr. Lito questioned if a member of the public wished to speak at greater length, would they speak there? And Mr. Migliore replied, no. They would have to comply with board policy. If they would like to speak at greater length, they would have to ask to be placed on the agenda by giving 10 days notice, notify the board, their topic, and to be placed on the agenda. There's also that policy that says you can notify the superintendent if you have to be, if you'd like to be an item on the agenda.
That's actually in the same policy.
Correct.
Yeah.
Vincent Paul asked if there are any desire of the board to change the agenda or if it can be accepted as is. There were no changes by the board. There was a request by the business manager, Mr. Rostner, to ask the board to consider adding the agenda to this particular agenda, the appointment of the district auditor. And I said, I'd like to propose to make that item 9P to appoint new auditors. The agenda was adopted with the changes. I don't know if anyone here recalls that discussion in any detail, but we were concerned about issues with respect to having to deal with so much detail on minutes that took us so long to correct, that the discussion came about as to how do we address all the administrivia that goes along with this challenge of trying to run the board meeting, and then more importantly, record actions of the board, which is the most important thing that we do as a public record. And this evening, when we looked at the minutes, which turned out to be 6 pages, I think we've reverted back to what we originally wanted to try to correct. And the format that was put in place actually achieved that. It achieved some secondary and some tertiary benefits as well, which for the chair made it much easier to record the actions rather than to take such copious notes that could then be translated into what would then become minutes, and make it very difficult for those that are responsible to create the minutes accurately. And so succinctly using the format that was proposed at the April 9th, 2012 meeting, and apparently approved by consent, because there was no objection, allows us to do that and to make the meeting shorter, in particular the approval of minutes. There's fewer errors to correct, there's the usual typos and what have you, but the substance of what becomes the minutes is much easier to get done accurately. So there's a concern on my part for that. The other thing is a non-public session, the form that I have suggested using and for the past 2 years used for non-public is a real simple process that's recommended by the School Board Association to record our action as a board and what we talk about and actually publish non-public minutes as a separate document, not included in the minutes of the formal meeting. Perhaps it's a style thing, but keeping them separate I have found to be far easier.
And I used that one tonight, the one that you used.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And I think as a practice, you know, without putting words in your mouth, you may come to like that.
I do.
So I think that your concern about policy is valid, and that you clearly read that there was no change to the policy. And for 2 years, we've operated under the new format that worked well for us. Also, in the subsequent meeting, I don't have those with me, I could pull it up, but I happen to recall that it was the minutes of May 9th, I believe, or May 12th of 2012, where as a result of expectations by some of the public that had comments, I simply added the paragraph at the bottom of the agenda that said, "Notice is hereby made that public comments shall be made without expectation of a response by any school board members to matters raised by such commentary. The board respects the right of the public to communicate its stance on matters of interest, but meetings are scheduled in advance to conduct business put forth on its publicly proposed agenda only. And it is the right of the school board to not even have to have public comment, because we're elected to conduct the business of the district. And so we could be as arrogant as that and decide that we don't want to listen to public comment. But I, for one, want to hear from the public, because I can tell you that the format of the prior agenda, and actually coincidentally this evening, somewhat, I think, accomplished my bigger concern, and that was to at least allow the public to comment on the agenda items only, which happened prior to when we took action on it, whether it was on the consent agenda or on the individual items that you had pulled aside and identified as actionable.
I was going to add a comment about just what you read at the bottom, but I didn't want to do it until our policy was actually revised, because I wanted to reflect.
Right.
Yeah,
And
what we say.
I need to cite a couple of other violations of board policy, and I could go beyond these few, but it's a matter of what's frankly practical. We've got to be pragmatic about running the business of the school board, and as a result, I'm going to propose a policy that we consider having the policy committee put in place that would make this issue at least go away. For example, the nomination of a non-voting faculty member for the school board. Under policy BBB, we amended that in May of 2012, and you may recall, and I distinctly recall, the discussion was that we wanted that individual to be anyone from the support staff, the administrative staff, or from the faculty.
Any employee.
Any employee,
Yeah,
basically.
except an administrator.
Right, but in our policy, it says, the Newfound Area School Board includes a non-voting faculty member. The faculty member is selected annually by ballot vote of the faculty of the Newfound Area School District. Well, just, I think it was today, Stacy, you put out the email for this?
Yep.
Just today, this went out, and it says, any employee of the Newfound Area School District is eligible for this role, and that's what we wanted to achieve. But we kind of messed up when we did the policy.
Yeah.
Because we all believed that it was a good thing to do, to bring forward anybody from the employee of the district to sit in the seat that has been well occupied by Mimi the past 2 years. So there's some flexibility that's necessary here. There was no ability for a policy in place for me to add the note at the end of the agenda, but I did, as a prerogative of the chair. Because I didn't want people to make public comments and expect that we were going to respond without full consideration of the board being able to think about it, because that's what was intended by that. But we need time to think about what we heard from the public. We have often heard, specifically that Fran Parkhurst mentioned tonight, about the audio quality at home on Channel 24. Mr. Martin mentioned that this evening. He asked about microphones. Under other business, I'd like to bring up that we take that consideration to heart and improve the quality of the audio of these meetings that are recorded on TV for those people. I can't tell you how many people have mentioned that to me. We need to do that. There's another thing. Policy BEA requires electronic communications by board members, which I have done for the past 2 years with access to the internet to record the URL of those sites that I visit during the meeting, because it's subject to right to know. And when we first approved that policy, which I fought long and hard for 5 or 6 years ago, I don't remember exactly when that was, Sue, do you? But it was a very unique thing to want to be able to use the internet during these meetings, and that was achieved. But you know what? We started out with recording those URLs at the end of the minutes that I access. Now, it's almost always sau4.org so that I can have access to online policy. But there are some times when I may Google something, and I remember at one meeting when we talked about school resource officer, I did some Googling on that. And so those members, myself explicitly, are required by law under right to know to reference in the minutes what URLs I go to. Do I do that? It's one of those things that just falls through. I forgot. I forget. So following policy is convenient when you need to use it for purposes of what your intent is, which is to, in this case, to provide for public comment on anything at the beginning of the meeting. Then yeah, you're going to want to change policy BDDH to do that. But what I contend is that there are so many policies out there that we constantly violate innocently that it's almost impossible for us to do this.
I don't know if I'd advertise that.
Well, that's the reality. I mean, I've been doing this and for 9 years, and it's very difficult. We would be so tied up in a knot and not get anything accomplished if we had to literally go by every policy. So I propose, as a separate matter, that we consider the following under other business, and I just want to, as part of my request to consider using a different format for the agenda to make it overall easier, and I really want to hear from other members of the board as to what they think about this change. But I want to direct the policy committee to discover, or rather study and consider, a philosophy policy to relieve ongoing administrative conflicts, such as, and just as an example, to create a policy that reads something like this: all other existing policies and prior policies notwithstanding to the contrary, the official action taken to supersede any matter shall modify existing policies in accordance with the spirit and intent of the newest matter as voted by the board until and if formally affected existing policies can be updated. And that would cover us when we make these little discretionary changes, unintentional errors, or in fact intentional errors because they become a nuisance to follow the policy as it exists. So I'm going to propose that under other business, that we consider that and hear from other members of the board. But the format change, I think, was done very abruptly and without consideration from other members of the board to understand what the repercussions might be. I contend that had we had the existing format in place, and we had public comment before we took action on the bonus matter, for example, that may not have happened the way it happened. That's speculation on my part, we'll never know. But the point is that it's very important to have public comment, in my opinion, prior to going ahead and taking action on items. I don't know how to convey the ease of recording the action taken during the meetings with the forms that have evolved, other than to say that I suggest that you give it a try, because it is far more succinct and to the point, even though it takes up in some cases several pages. I would like to be able to take the time to explain to our newest chair how that works and how the back and forth between the superintendent and the chair works. And by the way, there's another example. The superintendent is supposed to create the agenda with input from the board chair. It's in another policy somewhere.
It's in more than one, actually.
Yeah, and so technically that happens, but I would say, Stacy, that when you and I did that, it was with mutual consent on all of the detail that went in it. Yes, your office did create it and post it and publish it, and it was done in a quite an orderly manner and in a timely manner, I thought. I would like at this point to hear from other members of the board on what they think about trying to go through the agenda the way we've changed it.